Hello my loves, my name is Hannah and welcome to a new Try a Chapter video. Last month I made a start at trying to whittle down some of the books that are on my digital TBR. So I filmed a video where I was reading some of the ebooks that had been on my Everand saved list for the longest. Just having a little read and seeing what I was vibing with, because honestly some of the titles that are on my digital TBR, I don't even know why they're on there. I can't remember who that girl was who saved those titles half of the time. So I filmed that video, and in that video I kind of was like reading in quite an intensive time. I think I just spent like one weekend morning reading a bunch of different stuff. Time is not that available to me as I'm starting this video. So instead, I thought what I would do this week is chip away at some of the audiobooks, but I'm gonna film this video over a number of days in and around life being busy. So I'm just gonna kind of treat some of the audiobooks that have been languishing at the bottom of my saved list kind of like podcast episodes. So I'm just gonna like listen for a bit and get a gauge on whether this is a book that I definitely want to read, and crucially, if it's definitely a book I want to read in that format, because not every book works for me on audio. Sometimes I don't vibe with a particular audio performance, but also sometimes if it's a kind of a complex plot, if there's lots of things happening, lots of characters to keep track of, I prefer to read that in a digital or in physical format, just because I struggle to hold that many names in my head. So it's Monday afternoon. I'm about to go on a very rainy dog walk, and I'm going to start listening to a couple of the audiobooks on my dog walk. So I think the one that's right at the bottom of the list is The Death of Vivek Oji by Akwaeke Emezi. I can't remember off the top of my head who reads it, but I'll listen to it and then I will tell you who the narrator is, and I'll let you know how I feel about that one. I have read a couple of Akwaeke Emezi books before. I really liked the audiobook of Pet, and then I really didn't like Bitter. So I don't know where this is gonna stack up. But yeah. Let's go! Well, that was quick. Not my style of narration, sadly. Book sounds cool, but it's I can't deal with like too much of a breathy tone. In a narration, it really grates on me. So that actor's voice sadly didn't particularly work for me. So onwards and upwards. I think next is the God of, oh my god, God of all things, God of small things. The Booker Prize winning Arundhati Roy book. That one. Gonna try that instead. Hi. So I realised I should probably maybe tell you a little bit about the books. So, just so you know, in case you want to check it out, The Death of Vivek Oji was, this is the blurb. They burned down the market on the day Vivek Oji died. One afternoon, a mother opens her front door to find the length of her son's body stretched out on the veranda, swaddled in Akwete material, his head on her welcome mat. The death of Vivek Oji transports us to the day of Vivek's birth, the day his grandmother Ahuna died. It's the story of an overprotected mother and a distant father, and the heart-wrenching tale of one's family struggle to understand their child, just as Vivek learns to recognise himself. So I'm not saying I don't want to read this book, just not on audio. And while I was on my walk, I started listening to The God of Small Things, by Arundhati Roy, which is read by Aysha, and this won the Booker in 1997. And it is described as the richly exotic story of the childhood that the twins Estapen and Rael craft for themselves amongst India's vats of banana jam and mountains of peppercorns. Here perhaps is the greatest Indian novel by a woman. Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things is an astonishingly rich, fertile novel teeming with life, colour, heart-stopping language, wry comedy, and a hint of magic realism. Set against the backdrop of political turbulence in Kerala in southern India, The God of Small Things tells the story of the twins amongst the vats of banana jam and heaps of peppercorns in their... God, I hate it when the blurbs are repetitive. In their grandmother's factory, they try to craft a childhood for themselves amidst what constitutes their family. And this is very well read, and I really want to read it. Like, I really liked the writing. But I listened to about 10 minutes, and I couldn't hold the characters in my head. Like, it was a lot of, like, this person's aunt, blah, 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 and, like, their grandfather, blah, and I just, like, oh, no, I could just tell that I need to read that, but the ebook is available, I think, on Everand, so that's fine. I will just take the audiobook off and put the ebook on. So we're not getting things off of the TBR, but we're reducing the number slightly because I think I've saved this in both formats, I think. But I'm really excited about reading that one now. And I did start listening to The Fisherman by Chiogozie Obioma, but I think I was slightly distracted at that point in the walk, and then we bumped into my dog's pals, so I think I will re-listen to that. But I think that might be the third one that is like yes to the book, no to the audiobook, because again, hits you up front with quite a lot of characters, and I just was like, it's not the best start for me of an audiobook. But yeah, that's how things are going so far, and I will check in with you later. Hopefully, when I speak to you later, you'll notice the quality is much better because my new phone has arrived. So you'll be able to see all my paws in the next clip. It'll be so exciting for all of us. Bye. Good morning. Welcome to autumn. It's alright, they walk on. Do I look better and or worse? Picture better and or worse? It seems like it looks better. Playing with fire though, got the new phone with not the heavy duty new phone case on it, but I am walking on grass, so. I didn't listen to any more audiobooks yesterday because I got tied up doing some bits, but I was wrong about The Fisherman by Chiogozie Obioma. So this is set in 1990s Nigeria about following a young boy called Benjamin, and he's got 3 older brothers, and at the start of the book, I guess it is his book, at the start of the book his father moves out because he works for a bank and he's been transferred to a city quite a while away, and his father doesn't want the family to move with him because I think the city's quite prone to kind of violent outbursts at this point. It's got a bit of a reputation. He doesn't want to bring his young family there. And I only listened to like a little bit. Hi, darling. Are you gonna walk? Not gonna walk. Gonna stand. No, darling, we can't go see Zach this morning. No. It's his friend's house. Come on, kid. This way. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. It's very good. Yeah, I only listened to a few minutes. That's all I needed to kind of go, oh, I was just not paying close enough attention the first time I tried to listen to this. Because I followed it completely. My only reservation about listening to the audiobook is that in the 3 or 4 minutes that I listened to, there were like at least 3 sentences that I would have liked to underline. So I think it's going to stay on the TBR as an audiobook,
but if I happened to see a second-hand copy of it around in my life, I'm not going to go looking for one, but if I happen to find one, I might read a print copy instead. But I don't want to get it out of the library, because the whole reason I want a print copy is because I want to write in it. So that's where we are with that. And then I started a little bit of a non-history book called a non-history. Oh my god, can you tell she's just woken up? A non-fiction book called Strange Antics, The History of Seduction, by Clement, Knox. And this I had categorized, following my success with the Alexandra Horowitz book, as like a good bedtime reading, like low stakes non-fiction book. I thought this might be an interesting one for like a bedtime reading category, and I just didn't get on with the audio, like with the narration style, a little bit too staccato for me. So that's gonna, I think there's an ebook of that, which is better for bedtime reading for me anyway, because I fall asleep quicker reading an ebook than listening to an audiobook. So which is the whole point of bedtime reading, is to send me to sleep. So that's where we are. And now I think I'm going to try The Way of All Flesh by Samuel Butler, which I know nothing about except that it's kind of a classic, and I don't really know what it's like. And I think classics can be very hit and miss on audio, depending on depending on all the things that it always depends on, I guess. But yeah, gonna give that a go and report back. Okay, so apparently The Way of All Flesh, through a subversive brick, through the window of Victorian domesticity. So it was published in 1903, but published, I think, posthumously after Samuel Butler's death. It's like a thinly veiled autobiographical novel about, I guess, someone growing up in the Victorian era who doesn't want to be growing up in the Victorian era for various reasons. So let's give it a go. Nope. No. Not the right narration for me. Bit too, I don't know, bit too summer. I sound like I'm being really negative, but like honestly, I love audiobooks, but there's some things that I know I will not vibe with in an audiobook narration. It's not that the narrator does a bad job, it's just that they do something different to what I want. So and this is good. This is getting the list down, and to be honest, it's one of those ones where like I don't know if the book's going to stay on my TBR. I listened to like a couple of minutes of it and enough to be like, not the voice for me. But I think it's like with classics, I wouldn't say I'm transferring this onto like another TBR for another time. I think it's like one of those books that's like, again, if I saw it in a secondhand shop, I'd maybe flip through it, read a chapter, well, maybe not a full chapter, that might be taking the piss, but like read a little bit of it and get a vibe. But like, unless someone is going to jump in the comments and tell me that this is their favourite Victorian novel of all time, you know, I was going to give it a go if it was there. So yeah. Next, I think we have iRobot, so classic sci-fi. Let's see if we get on any better with that. Nope. No, thank you. I would like to read iRobot, but not in this format. Next up is All the Lovers of the Night by Mieko Kawakami. So we're really moving around the genres. Really? We have to go through the long grass? BRB, gotta go through the long grass. Okay, come on then. No. Breathy again. Can't do a breathy narrator. I did suspect this was one that I did suspect I would prefer to read. I do really want to read this book. I didn't like Heaven by this author, but I think I didn't like that because I thematically didn't vibe with it. There were parts of the writing that I did like. So this is one that is definitely going to stay on my TBR in some format. I'll just look for it in as an ebook or in a physical form instead. Okie dokes. I think we've got another Akwaeke Emezi next. I think we've got You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. So, God, it would be nice if we could get one. Have we only got The Fisherman so far? It's not been very successful. Like, I want to get books off my TBR, but I also want to keep some books. Do you know what I mean?
Hello from my lunch break. I thought I would update you on the books that I tried on the remainder of my walk, which I have written down here because they're on my phone. So I think I left you off just about to start You Made a Fool of Death with Your Beauty. Yeah, is that the right way around? Have I got Death and Beauty the right way around there? By Akwaeke Emezi, and I enjoyed this and I liked the narration style, so that's good. I listened to about 7 or 8 minutes. It opens with a sex scene. Love a book that opens with a sex scene. Yeah, it's not giving me like immaculate vibes, but it's staying on the list. And then one I really liked the start of is Aftermath, which is a non-fiction book. It's a memoir by Rachel Cusk about the breakdown of her marriage. And she starts it sort of talking about like as a novelist, and I've never read any of her novels, and I know she's all I know about her is that she's a bit of a marmitey author, and the people who love her really fucking love her, and the people who don't really don't, and I don't know anything more about her writing, but I enjoyed the bit that I listened to. She doesn't narrate it herself, which is understandable, I think, given the subject matter. But she sort of opens talking about the fact that when she's writing, and sometimes when she's writing a novel, something goes wrong and the novel stops being able to be written. And so you have to go back and work out where something went wrong that made that the case. And she sort of does that treatment, I think, with her marriage. So it starts saying that, you know, her marriage broke down, and that her husband thought that she had been very unkind, but it's very euphemistic. We don't know what happened, and I'm not actually sure if we will. I don't know if it doesn't give me the vibe that it's like a tell-all memoir, do you know what I mean? But she was talking about the difference between truth and a story, and I think it's going to be kind of like interesting, but then it goes right back to like when she was in school. So I think it's one of those ones that's like about the breakdown of her marriage, but not really about the breakdown of her marriage, if you get what I mean. So that's staying on the list, enjoyed it. And then another memoir, I started The Beauty of Dusk by Frank Bruni, and this was one of the ones that I had no idea about, couldn't remember ever putting it on my list, but it's Frank Bruni is a writer and a journalist, and he woke up one morning with really blurred vision, and sort of weirdly didn't do anything about it at first, and it turned out he'd suffered a stroke, and there was irreparable damage to his optic nerve as a result of this stroke that he had. And I think the book is basically about him dealing with the loss of that vision. He didn't completely lose his eyesight, but a significant chunk of his of his eyesight was lost. So, and I enjoyed parts of that. It does a little bit have the vibe of a book that's going to be like, oh, well, I experienced this issue, and through resilience, these are the ways that this thing that I thought was a curse was actually a blessing. So we'll see, but I enjoyed the bit that I read enough to keep it on my TBR. And it's non-fiction November coming up, so I'm kind of like particularly looking for maybe some non-fiction books that I might want to get to in November. And then the last one, I tried a little bit of You Don't Know Us Negroes by Zora Neale Hurston, and while I really want to read this essay collection, I've decided audio is not the best way for me, because I really want to be able to properly take in. Sorry, I'm shaking. I'm really hungry and excited for pasta. I really wanted to be able to take in what she was reading, and this, I think, for me, not going to be ideal on audio. So that was those things, and I'm going to eat my pasta and go back to work. Bye. Hello. Yes, I am midweek drinking, but it's Tuesday, it's already been a long week. I am trying to work out what clothes to take on a 2-day trip to London. It's 11:30 on Tuesday night, and I thought, I better update you on some books before I totally forget about them. So, trusty post-it note. Firstly, my friend Rachel recommended Shirley Hazard to me as one of their favourite authors, and I started listening to The Great Fire by Shirley Hazard, which is kind of, I think, like an epic, like World War II romance. I'm not into the book, but the audio didn't do anything for me. Then I listened to Foreverland on the Divine Tedium of Marriage by Heather either Havrilsky or Havrilsky, but unfortunately for me, my V's and R's are indistinguishable in my handwriting, so who knows, one of those, I'll put a cover up. And this is a non-fiction book about marriage, and I enjoyed this. I listened to about 10 minutes of this. So the reason I got through so many books is because I was meal prepping for like 3 days worth of meals. So I was in the kitchen a lot, so I was just like trying lots of different audiobooks. And I enjoyed this one. It was quite funny. She sort of was like, it's interesting when you think about marriage, that basically the only time anyone is willing to call a marriage a success is when it lasts until the death of one of the couple, because until one of you dies, the marriage isn't a success, because it could always fail. And then I think it's going into like a lot of different kind of like stories of different marriages, a kind of like non-fiction book about marriage, I guess, which is interesting to me as a person who's in a long-term monogamous relationship who isn't married. So I'll give that. I enjoyed that. It'll go on my TBR for a future point, don't know when. Then I listened to A House for Mr. Biswas by V.S. Naipaul, and I have never read any of them before, and I enjoyed this. I hadn't quite realised, like, when I knew of this book, it's kind of a modern classic, but I thought it was a more modern classic than it is. So it was published, I think, in like 1961, like the early 60s, and I thought of it, in my head it was like written in the 80s. But this is set in Trinidad, I think. Trinidad? I think it's set in Trinidad. And we're following a man who is sort of trying to make a life for himself, basically. But we begin at the end. So we begin at the point where he has managed to get this house, and then I think we're going to go back in time. But I enjoyed it. It was pretty engaging, so I'm gonna keep that on the TBR. Reservoir 13 by John McGregor. This is gonna go quite high on the TBR. I was really into this. This is like a list. It won like the Costa Book Award back when that was a thing. Whatever year this came out, I can't remember. But it's like a crime, like a thriller. And a young girl has disappeared, but it was really engaging, and I enjoyed the writing style, and I thought the narration was really good, so that was a big fat tick. Then I listened to some of the Kreutzer Sonata by Leo Tolstoy, which is like one of his like shorter works. It's only, the audiobook's about 4 hours, I think, which for a Tolstoy is very quick indeed. And I enjoyed it. It had a slightly, I think the things that sometimes people don't enjoy about Tolstoy's writing can be like his big historical lessons and tangents that he can go off on. I personally don't mind them, but I think this is going to have less of that because it's a kind of like shorter book. So I enjoyed that. I'll keep that on. Then I listened to another V.S. Naipaul, The Mimic Man, which I knew nothing about, but it is about, it's set in England, but the main character is a kind of retired or possibly disgraced politician from the West Indies. And it was giving kind of like My Friends vibes, because I think he is like exiled now from his nation in Trinidad. I wasn't as interested in that one as A House for Mr. Biswas, but I'm going to keep it on the TBR, but kind of like, it's that classic kind of like acorn classic layer of like, I'm not in a mad rush to get to it, but I'm happy for it to stay on my TBR. It would be nice to be reminded every so often that I want to read that book at some point. Then I was really, really into a book that was in the no idea why this is on my TBR category, which was English Passengers by Matthew Neal. And this has a full cast audiobook. And it's a historical novel that's set on a boat that is going, I think, from the UK to Tasmania in 1857, and like hijink. I think it's like the story of all of the characters that happen to be on that boat. And we start, the opening section, so the bit that I listened to, is about a man from the Isle of Man, which was really kind of quite funny. And it's got a full cast. I think there's about 8 or 9 actors. So yeah, gonna keep that one. That's kind of, it's giving me winter vibes. It's quite long. I think the audiobook is about 20 hours. So I might like set that one up for like December, January time, maybe. The Years by Annie Ernaux. I've never read Annie Ernaux, and I know I should. Not on audio, or at least not this book on audio. It sounded nice. Like I was like, oh, that's a good sentence, but I was struggling to kind of like keep the whole piece together. So I'm gonna try that. The ebook is also on Everand, I think. So I think I'm gonna maybe ebook that one instead. And then one that I think I might just like carry on listening to was The Boys by Ron and Clint Howard. So this is Ron Howard, the film director, and his brother Clint Howard, who I haven't heard of, but I think is also in the movie business. And it's a kind of joint memoir that the two brothers have written about growing up in Hollywood, because their parents were also actors. So like his daughter, Bryce Dallas Howard, is like a double Nepo baby, or like a third generation Nepo. Yeah, I was really enjoying it, and I like a memoir. I feel like it suits where my brain is currently at, because I feel like particularly this style of memoir feels like it's going to be quite anecdotal. So, you know, if I'm not at my 100% most attentive, I'm not gonna miss out on anything major. So those are the books I read, and I'll check in with you when I've read more. I don't know when that will be, so I'll be up early tomorrow because I'm doing the morning dog walk, and then I will be working. I will be continuing to pack to go to London. I'm on like a 5 o'clock train. No, I'm on like it's not important to you what time my train is. I'm on like a late afternoon, early evening train down to London, and then I'm there for 2 days. So I will be listening to things in and amongst that, but I don't know when I'm going to have a chance to talk to you about them again. So see you when I see you. Morning. It is Saturday.
So we didn't listen to any audiobooks while we were in London. It was a great trip. It was a busy couple of days, and Heartstopper came out, so I had to watch that, and I think my reaction to that third series will be on my channel already by the time this is up. Here's some autumnal ASMR for you. It's a perfect autumn day today. Like, crisp blue sky, enough leaves on the ground to be pleasurable, but not enough to get in my way. But I am going to do some more audiobook listening this weekend, and then we'll wrap this up probably tomorrow, and just see how many more I can get through. So next on the hit list is When We Cease to Understand the World by Benjamin Laboutat, which was nominated for the International Booker, and I'm sorry, off the top of my head, I don't know the translator's name. It's not actually very obvious on Everand, from scrolling through on the first page. You know where they have the like author and then the narrator, and on the little like scrolly bit, I wish they would also put the translator if it was a translated work, but they don't, so that's that. I don't really know much about it, except that it was nominated for the Booker, and I feel like it's one of those ones that's either going to work really well on audio or is just not. I think it's going to be a good book, but it might not be a audio book, you know? So I'm going to listen to that, and I will check back in however many minutes it takes for me to make a call. Okay, bye. 3.5 minutes. Yes, I like this. It's, I don't know how it's going to come together, but it's opened talking about Hermann Goering's addiction to analgesics. I can't remember which brand, or not brand, but like what kind, but like codeine plus. And the fact that they tried to get him clean before he stood trial after the war. And I was like, okay, is the whole book about this? So then I read the blurb, because that's the order that I do things in. And it's like a collection of stories about people with brilliant minds that took them into uncharted places and the destruction that can cause, basically. So where there's like, obviously we're starting with Goering, and then there's like mathematicians and scientists. I think that's very cool. I'm enjoying the narration style of it, so I will probably continue it as an audiobook, but there is a lot that I might want to revisit or underline, so I am wondering, it's what I think is going to go on that list of like, if I can find a second-hand copy of it, if that just happens to like cross my path naturally, I'll get it, because obviously there's a fair amount of like truth. It's like really treading that line, I think, between fiction and non-fiction. So yeah, enjoyed that one. Next up, Grown Ups by Marion Keyes. You know, I have never read any Marion Keyes, so off I go to remedy that. Like it. Love a Irish book to be narrated, because I will never tire of the Irish accent. It reminds me of my nana. However, like 2 minutes in, so many names. It starts at a dinner party, so there's lots of people around, and I like that, but I'm gonna struggle to hold people. I think I need to see the words. So it's a yes to the book, no to the audio for that. So next up, just checked, is Silence is My Mother Tongue by Suleiman Adonia. So this is, I know, kind of like a quiet, subversive feminist book about the ways that the world is a fucking nuisance for women, I think. Slow, reflective books, hit and miss for me on audio. Sometimes they really work, sometimes I can't quite get into them. So let us see. Narrated by Adjo Ando though, so that's good. Yeah, like it. No idea the direction it's going to go, but we're starting. Our narrator it's told in first person, and she's like talking about her cinema, and then they're living in a compound, and she's being told to come and attend the trial of a woman called Saba. And she says she's looking through her cinema screen, and for a while I was like, oh no, I'm not getting it, I don't understand, how's this cinema here, what? And the cinema is a big white sheet that she's on a hill that she's cut a hole out of, and so they look through this hole and kind of treat it like a cinema, like a film that's happening, but it's actually just life happening on the other side of the sheet. And yeah, I don't know if I should look at the plot, at the blurb, so that I know where and when it's set, because it hasn't told me, or if I should just let the book tell me. But either way, I'm really enjoying it. So now I'm going to try Butter, Honey, Pig, Bread by Francesca Equiasi, which is a Canadian book. I think it was shortlisted for Canada Reads. So that's good. I don't read enough Canadian literature. And this, I think I saw the title of this and just thought, that sounds, what the hell is that? Saved it, have never looked at it since. But so no idea what this is about. So let's dig in. Yeah, I think I'll give this one a go. It might not quite be right for audio. I kind of can't tell yet. The prologue a little bit went over my head, but I think I caught the gist of it. It's just the way it was told. I don't have the brain this morning to get into it, but if you've read it, you'll know. And then we're starting with part one. It's called Butter, so I assume there's going to be 4 parts: butter, honey, pig, and bread. And it's really interesting. It's got a lot of kind of like folklore in it. And it's talking about a thing called an ukbanje, which is it reminds me a bit of, if you've read Hungry Ghosts by Kevin Jarrett Hussein. They remind me a little bit of the Hungry Ghosts, but it's this idea that they're these like haunted children who are trapped in this cycle of wanting to be born and then wanting to go back to the peace of not being alive. So they're kind of trapped in this cycle, and it's a kind of folklore, I think, that's been brought up to that's come into being to explain child loss and miscarriage. And I was really interested in that. I think it's one of the things that my reservation about the audiobook is that like a lot of the words are really unfamiliar to me, and I would like to see them written down because I have no idea how to spell that word, so I don't even know how to Google it. Do you know what I mean? Like if I wanted to find out more. So that's my only thing, thinking maybe the audiobook might not be quite right for me, but definitely a book that I'd like to read. Interesting, yeah. Next up we have Free Food for Millionaires by Min-Jin Lee. Don't know much about it, but that's such a salty title. If this doesn't give me some like great anti-capitalist vitriol, I'll be disappointed. Yeah, like that. We're doing very well today, aren't we? This is why I'm glad I've done this, because these have just been like right at the bottom of the scroll list. I was never gonna pick any of these books next to read because they're just like too far down the fucking list. Although now they'll be at the top of the list because I've started listening to them. So yeah, I liked that. It has a very kind of like classic opening. We're following a young woman who's 22. She's American. Her parents are Korean immigrants and run a dry cleaners in Manhattan. And it's got that like classic storyteller bit, the bit where you just get a bit of background about who she is. It's like Casey Hahn's like this, and this is her background, and da-da-da. But I kind of didn't mind it. So I've got no idea where the story's going from the little bit that I listened to, but I quite liked it. It's got this sort of like detached, quite distant third person. The narrator is very much a narrator, And I kind of liked that. So great. And next up we've got The Colony by Audrey McGee, which I feel like this is one of those books from like the Booker backlists, or like the more recent Booker backlists, that I think is really divisive, because I know some people absolutely love it and think it's like the best thing ever, and some people hate it. So let's see if I can work out which camp I'll fall in after about 3 minutes of listening. Definitely like it enough to be like, yeah, I'll give it a go, to like read it with the intention that I will finish it. I think it actually is to do with the audio performance. The narrator is great. It felt more like a radio play than an audiobook, and which is impressive for like one narrator, so that's good. And yeah, just at the start there's a boatman and a painter, and they're trying to get in a boat. That's all I've got for you. That is all I've got for you. Next up we have The Country of Others by Leila Silmani, who is an author that I've been meaning to read but haven't got to before yet. And this, I think, is set at the close of the Second World War in Alsace. That's all I know. Okay, the good news is I really liked that they had a French narrator for a French book. The bad news is it wasn't my favourite kind of narration style. Very softly spoken, just puts me to sleep a little too much. So definitely not going to work on audio. I don't think I listened to enough, because I'm really just trying to work out if the audiobook is staying on my TBR. I don't think I listened to enough to work out if it's a book I want to read. I think I've read a fair amount of kind of like Second World War era literature recently. I kind of want to give it a bit of a break. So I think it's probably one that I might take this specific book off my TBR, but keep Leila Slimani on my, which I did pronounce wrong before, because I read it as Silmani, but you know, that's because I'm not very good at reading. I think I'll keep her as an author that I would like to explore, but possibly not this book first, unless you have very strong feelings otherwise, so let me know. Okay, now I could have done even a small amount of research to check if this would be okay, but I didn't. So where's my dog? Oh, he's there. Next up is Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. Now, it was a Mieko Kawakami book that I didn't like earlier in the video. I didn't like the narration of, and I could have checked if it was the same narrator, but that would have involved like scrolling and checking things, so I'm just going to listen to it and see. Liked this one. It's actually got two narrators. I only listened to a bit with one of them, but yeah, it was a different narrator, I think. And yeah, I really liked this. It sort of begins with like the first narrator's definitions of like how to work out if someone grew up poor or not, to do with how many windows you had in your home. And I think, yeah, it was interesting. I like the writing style, I like the narration style. I'll stick with it. Cool. We're about to get to Lewin's favourite place to walk at the minute, which is the Coast Road, which sounds delightful, but it's actually just like a main road going from the centre of Newcastle out to the coast, and it'll be too loud to record, so I'll probably listen to a few and catch you up in a chunk in a minute. Cool. I think the first one is it Bit of Orange Tree next? Might be a Bit of Orange Tree. I'll tell you later, shall I?
Hello there. It's Sunday evening, and I said, hey, I'll check in with you at the end of Sunday evening, because I did carry on listening to audiobooks yesterday and today, but I just didn't have a chance to sit down. So I've got some notes down here of the how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 books that I listened to since I last spoke to you. I'm going to quickly rattle through them and then we're going to wrap up. So
So I listened to Bitter Orange Tree by Joka Alati, which was translated from the Arabic by Marilyn Booth. This is an Omani book, and I think would be the first book by an author from Oman that I've read, or at least I certainly can't think off the top of my head of another author from that country that I have read. So I really wanted to like it for that reason. And I did, so phew. From the little bit of this that I listened to, it was the main character reflecting on her relationship with her mother. Specifically, she was remembering her mother's hands, and she had, she damaged her thumb at some point. She'd suffered some kind of injury to her thumb, which had like blackened the nail. It had basically sort of like killed the nail, so it didn't grow properly, and it was like big and thick and black. And she was kind of talking about that and her regret at the fact that she had never, can you hear that buzzing? So, it is a Sunday evening. I'm sorry, but I've started now, and I don't have time to wait for it to stop. So sorry if you can hear that in the background. Yeah, she's reflecting on the fact that she regrets not having asked her mum like how she got that injury, but the writing was really beautiful, really lyrical, but not too lyrical, because I do sometimes struggle, we'll talk about that later, I sometimes struggle with like overly lyrical writing, especially in an audiobook, because I sometimes get a little bit lost in the metaphor and find it hard to work out what's actually going on. So it was like a really good balance. So I enjoyed that one. Then I listened to the first little bit of Happening by Annie Ernaux, which you may recall is the second Annie Ernaux book that I have tried in this video. And this one I think I would get on with in an audiobook, partly because it's much shorter and it's non-fiction. So it's, but I mean, it is a difficult topic. This wasn't covered in the little bit that I read, which was kind of just general musings around memory, but the book is, it's like under 2 hours, I think, the audiobook of this, and it's Annie Ernaux reflecting on the events that led to her attempting to abort a pregnancy at home, and the aftermath of that. She nearly lost her life in the kind of in the aftermath of that. So it's kind of about that. So I think I'm gonna have to be careful about when I choose to listen to that book, but I think that one I think I could do on audio. Then I listened to Acts of Service by Lillian Fishman, which is a contemporary queer book. It's set in New York. It's following a kind of 20-something central character who is sort of exploring her relationship with sex and sexuality. So at the start of the book, she's in a relationship with a woman living with her, and she, for some reason, she says she's always enjoyed taking nudes, basically, like taking pictures of herself, but she never sends them anywhere. She doesn't really know why she feels compelled to do it, and then one day she decides to anonymously upload pictures of herself to this sort of encrypted website, and then plot happens. But I enjoyed it. It was a little kind of like, it felt a little like it could get slightly navel-gazy, young woman, kind of a bit tropey, but I enjoyed the writing enough that I would definitely give it a go, and it was well read. Then I listened to the first bit of The Son of the House by Chiluchi Onyemelukwe Onobia, which is a Nigerian novel, and this has a really interesting kind of like opening sort of scene. So we are in, I think, is it first person? I think it was first person. It's an elderly woman who, along with another woman, and we don't know their relationship at the start, or even if they know each other, but they've both been kidnapped in Nigeria, and they are being held ransom in, like, because their kidnappers want their families to pay up money for them basically. And we're kind of just inside one of these women's heads. She's an older woman, and I'm interested enough in the premise to kind of see where it goes. I don't know if I found the reaction to that situation. For a first person narrative, it didn't feel very like frantic or scared. She seemed more like annoyed and kind of inconvenienced by it. Now that might play into kind of like a larger commentary, or it might be that becomes like a kind of central part of who that character is. But just at the outset, I was like, you're sort of taking this kind of well, considering it's a very scary, violent situation. Yeah, I enjoyed it. It's not going like sky high on my TBR, but it's definitely like a book that I'll give it a go as and when I feel like it. And that's all sounding pretty positive so far, but this next one I think is not going to be one that I continue with. This is I Was Never the First Lady by Wendy Guerra, and this is a Cuban novel. It is set with the Cuban Revolution in the kind of background, and I thought this could be a really cool book on audio, because when it opens, it is someone giving a kind of like statement on a radio broadcast. So I was like, oh, if this is like a full feature of the book, then this could work really nicely as an audiobook. And the speaker is sort of kind of, they're justifying their position, which, as someone who doesn't know tons about the Cuban Revolution, I couldn't quite work out how much of their position I was supposed to understand. And it was a bit kind of, the way it was written, it was like lots of words that weren't communicating much meaning to me. And it could have been that was, again, like a deliberate conceit, but I found myself, I just like wasn't very interested, and it just didn't quite work for me. And I maybe thought that if it is a book that I do read, probably not on audio, because there were also just like quite a lot of like details that I would want to be able to go back and revisit, and that's just like harder to do on an audiobook. So I think that one is a no. However, I am interested in reading a book that's like set during the Cuban Revolution. So if you have any recommendations that aren't this book, please let me know. And then I listened to the first little bit of the Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honoré Fanon Jeffers. And this is a book that I absolutely want to read, but no to the audio. Not because of the performance, just because I could just tell really early on that it was a book that I might not necessarily would want to underline, but it's quite a long book, and there were quite a lot of kind of, it was quite densely written, or it felt quite densely written at the start, and I just thought it feels like a book where I may need to go back and reread bits and pieces, and again, just practically speaking, not going to work for me as an audiobook. Then I listened to a Norwegian book, which is Lean Your Loneliness Slowly Against Mine by Clara Hevberg, which is translated by Alison McCulloch, and I really enjoyed this. It is a book that's got a lot of maths in it, which I wouldn't have thought would be like, oh yeah, I'm into this, but I was really into it. It's the first little bit that I listened to is kind of her recollecting about the importance of numbers and patterns and mathematical patterning, and how that has kind of manifested in her life, which sounds like a bit out there, and I appreciate that, but it was really kind of human and sensitive, and I really enjoyed it. I think this was a debut novel that caused a little bit of a stir, and I can kind of see why, so I was very intrigued by it. It is available on Everand as both a audiobook and an ebook, and I think if I read it I might flip between the two, because I really enjoyed the audiobook performance, and I was following along with the audio, but I also think some parts of it I might want to highlight in bits and pieces, because there were a lot of really cool and interesting ideas. And yeah, that one I'm really excited to get to actually. it's really interesting doing like an exercise like this where you're trying so many in quite a condensed amount of time. So all of these books that I'm talking to you about, I listened to on 2 walks. So kind of like one chunk and then another chunk. And I think it's really interesting to see which ones leave the kind of lasting impressions, and that one definitely was one of them. Then I listened to a little bit of All the Quiet Places by Brian Thomas Isaac. This is a book by an Indigenous American author, and it is set in the 50s, or at least the first part of it is set in the 50s in Northern Ohio, I think, like kind of on the edge of a reservation. And we're following a young boy called Eddie, who is about 5 at the start of the book. And I thought it's told in third person, but quite a close third person, which I think is a good way of writing a child, because it means you can sort of capture the way children experience the world without having to articulate it the way a child would. And I thought that was pretty good. I wasn't immediately like drawn into the story, but I was interested enough that I would like to read it. And having read the Tommy Orange books recently, and sort of was reminded that Indigenous American authors is a bit of a gap in my reading, I definitely want to keep this one on my TBR. Then I listened to a bit of Inconvenient Daughter by Laura J. Sharkey. This is about a woman called Rowan, and in the very opening of the book, she's in hospital reporting a sexual assault that she's been the victim of, and then that happens very quickly right at the start, so you are right in there with the content warnings if that's going to be not good for you. So it is right up front, right at the center. Not graphic at the start, but obviously I only read the first little bit, so I don't know where the book's going to go. And then after that, we jump back in time to when she's 5 years old and she's going to school for the very first time. And she's recalling that it was a really difficult day because she'd been really upset because her hair wasn't curling the way her mother's hair is curly. And we realise over the course of this recollection that she's adopted, that she's been adopted from, it doesn't specify, but I think China, but definitely Southeast Asia, and that she's been adopted into a family who are of a different ethnicity to her, and her kind of like struggle with that. So I think the book is maybe going to be tying together those two things. I don't know if that first opening scene is going to be the end or if that's going to occur partway through, but I enjoyed the writing style enough that I would like to carry on reading it at some point. Then I listened to A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by Emma McBride, and this I knew as a kind of like meditative, quite experimental book, and it is actually like, I don't know, because obviously I was listening to the audiobook, but it reads and it's read by the author, so I assume she's reading it exactly how she intended for it to be read. It reads like a poem, so I don't know if it's written in verse or if it's just written very lyrically, and it's quite fragmented, and it doesn't sound like prose at all, and part of me was really enjoying it. So I do think I would listen to it as an audio, partly because you really get that sort of rhythm to the writing when you're listening to it, and I thought that was really great. However, I think if I listen to it, I can't just listen to it the way I would normally listen to an audiobook, like when I'm cooking or when I'm kind of like pottering around, because it sounds like it would need more of my attention than that. So I'm interested. I would like to read it, but it will probably be like a bit of a taxing read. Then I listened to a bit of Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, and this is I think more of like a classic kind of contemporary crime thrillery book. It opens and we're told that the middle child of this family, Lydia, has disappeared, but we're following the family before they know that has happened. So you're kind of like watching this family go about their ordinary morning routines with the knowledge that something has happened that is going to massively derail and disrupt their lives, but they're not aware of it yet, which I thought was kind of interesting. I wasn't blown away by it, but I will read it. I'll kind of keep it for like, sometimes I do just fancy like a bit of a thrillery one, and I've never read this author before, so I'm going to keep that on the TBR, can give that a go at some point. Then I listened to I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. Now, I have seen the film adaptation of this book by Jessie Buckley, and I really liked the first kind of third of it. It's very weird, but it kind of starts quite ordinary, a little bit ominous, but mostly ordinary. And then it becomes mental. And for me, the film didn't work at all, and I didn't like it, but I was interested to try the book. However, on reflection, it's probably not, I probably did have to listen to significantly more of the book than I did like for this exercise, because I really enjoyed the first bit, but then I really enjoyed the first bit of the film, and I don't know, I'm definitely going to keep it on my TBR because I'm interested to see how it differs. Not that I can particularly remember everything that happened in the film, but it was definitely like bonkers. Like if you've seen the film Holy Motors, like that level of bonkers, although I kind of liked that, but anyway, not important. Yeah, so I'm gonna continue with that one, knowing that I might DNF it like halfway through if it becomes like the film did. And then the final book that I listened to was a non-fiction book. It was called Pests: How Humans Create Animal Villains by Bethany Brookshire. And this is, as the title suggests, about I think she looks at different animals throughout the book, but how we sort of, as humans, create environments where certain animals become villainized as pests. So she opens in the introduction talking about squirrels and about how some people think they're this like lovely, charming, sweet like creatures, and how she is in an ongoing battle with the squirrels in her garden because she just wants to grow tomatoes and they just will not let her. Like they go through she calls them Kevin, even though she knows there's more than one squirrel living in this tree in her garden. She calls them all Kevin. They're actually called fucking Kevin, but Kevin. And every time she tries to grow tomatoes, he goes and bites one, and then realizes he doesn't like tomatoes and leaves it, and then it rots. But he does it to like every single tomato. So to her, these squirrels are like absolute pests, and I enjoyed it. I don't know, that's just the introduction. I don't know, like, and it was very conversational. That was very like not super kind of non-fiction, if you get what I mean. But I'm not sure going forward if it will continue in exactly that tone. But I think I'm going to keep this on my TBR, but it is also available as an ebook, and I think I would predominantly read it as an ebook because it is a great contender for my bedtime reading category, which is I like to have kind of gentle non-fiction that I read on my phone in bed when I'm struggling to sleep. So this may go in that category. And those are the books that I read. So let me know if you've read any of these, if I have bumped off my TBR, anything that you feel very strongly about. Feel free to lobby for the books down below. Equally, in fact, no, don't tell me if you hated some of these ones that I'm excited for, but I would like to know if you've read anything. And if you've enjoyed this video, if you could give it a little thumbs up, that would be marvelous. If you're new here, I probably will be doing more of these going forward, so if you enjoyed this video, you should subscribe to my channel. And I will see you for a mystery video next week, because I'm about to go to Japan and I have no idea what the next thing going up on my channel will be. Who knows? Subscribe to find out. I'll catch you later. Bye.